Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today I'm entering an online Pokemon Go tournament to try and earn respect for a Pokemon that has quickly become one of my all-time favorites in the entire Pokemon franchise. Now this tournament is going to have some fierce competition, as there are many trainers competing who have made it to rank 1 in the world on the Go Battle League leaderboards, as well as a regional champion or two as well, so the stakes could not be higher. Now the Pokemon that I'm looking to earn respect for and get wins with at this tournament is Regidrago. Regidrago is a pure Dragon-type Pokemon that honestly has a pretty terrific moveset. For its fast move, it has Dragon Breath, one of the best fast attacks in the game that has an amazing balance of fast move damage and energy generation. For its bait move, it has Breaking Swipe, a move that, while not dealing a ton of damage, is very cheap to get to and has a 50% chance to lower your opponent's attack. And finally, its nuke move is Dragon Energy, a new move introduced this season. Dragon Energy is an incredibly efficient attack. It only costs 10 energy more than Breaking Swipe while doing exactly double the damage. So right off the bat, Regidrago does have a lot going for it. Now, despite its strong moveset, you may be still asking, why am I using Regidrago? Well, not only is it one of my favorite Pokemon, but it has incredibly strong neutral matchups. In matchups where neither Pokemon are hitting each other for super effective damage, Regidrago is almost always emerging victorious. Add to that the fact that Dragon typing in general is incredibly strong at breaking the common fire, water, grass cores that not only do we see in the video game franchise, but we also see in competitive Pokemon Go. I think Regidrago could prove to be a bit problematic for some opponents' teams. However, it wouldn't be fair to just talk about the positives of potentially using Regidrago. I believe I should also share why using Regidrago may not be the greatest idea ever and why most competitive players are not really giving it a chance. Well, Regidrago has zero coverage. It has a very strong moveset, but every move it learns is a Dragon type. That means if it's in a matchup where the Dragon moves are resisted, it has little to no play. On top of that, it means that if it wins a lead matchup and a Dragon resist hits the field, let's say an Azumarill, a Water Fairy type, its energy that it has in store is useless unless it gives up switch advantage. So for those two reasons, people are not really considering Regidrago in their Show 6 Pick 3 squads for the World Championships, which is taking place later this week. However, I'm going to see if I can team build to try and put Regidrago in a position for success. If I want Regidrago to succeed, then I need teammates that will scare off the common Fairy and Steel type Pokemon so that Regidrago can safely see play. Common Fairy types include Dedenne and Tinkaton, and for Steel types, it's more often than not Scizor, Forretress, and Tinkaton since it is a Fairy Steel type. Not only that, but I also would really like to cover against potential Ice types and Pokemon that have Ice charge attacks that could hit Regidrago for super effective damage. A very common Ice type is Lapras, and Dusclops, while not being an Ice type itself, has access to the super effective Ice Punch. With these parameters in mind, I got in the lab and with some very wise advice from a few trainers who will be competing at the World Championships, I worked on building a team. The first teammate that I was going to pair with Regidrago honestly felt quite obvious, and that was going to be Shadow Scizor. Shadow Scizor is an incredibly strong offensive presence in the meta. It's amazing at pressuring shields early, and with Bullet Punch, it can inflict massive fast move pressure onto basically any Pokemon that it encounters. Not only that, but it covers Regidrago's weaknesses nicely. It does very well into a lot of the problematic Ice types, it does very well into the Water types, and it can hold its own against the opposing Steel types that give Regidrago problems, with the exception of Forretress. Now that I had a strong duo, I was going to look for a neutral presence in the meta, and I found that in Dusclops. For Dusclops, I was not necessarily thinking about the weaknesses of Regidrago, I just wanted a Pokemon that I felt that I could bring to most every battle. Dusclops has very neutral matchups across the board, and it is monstrously bulky. I'm intentionally running a Dusclops that is very, very bulky. It's a rank 16, so I should be able to tank a lot of hits, and Dusclops has incredibly fast pacing. While it does not hit very hard, its fast pacing can help it stall out the switch timer if it gets in a negative matchup. Finally, I needed to go back to making Fairy-type Pokemon's life miserable, so the third teammate on the team is going to be Gastrodon. Gastrodon is an absolute nightmare for two of the best Fairy types in the meta, that being Dedenne and Tinkaton. On top of that, Gastrodon in general has really good synergy with Regidrago. Due to its ground and water typing, the only weakness Gastrodon has is to grass types, and grass really does not appreciate the dragon type pressure from Regidrago. On top of that, Gastrodon not a big fan of flyers, and Regidrago can handle most of the flyers since many of them do not possess a resistance to dragon. One weakness that I mentioned at the start that I haven't really covered for yet is Dusclops. Not only that, I do want to cover for Dusclops while continuing to make life difficult for the fairy types, so the fourth teammate is Galarian Weezing. Weezing is probably the worst mon on this team, but the idea behind it is it has play into Dusclops, Dedenne, and Azumarill. My worry with adding Weezing to the team is it does add an additional Lapras weakness, so it does mean that if I see Lapras, it could be a bit of an uphill climb. Now that we have 5 members of the team, let's add the final one, and that is Talonflame. Talonflame, a very hard counter to Tinkaton, Forretress, and Scizor, has very nice synergy with the Pokemon we added 2 mons ago, Gastrodon. And it has good synergy with Regidrago if Lapras or Azumarill are not Pokemon that my opponent has on their team. So now, the full team has been set. Regidrago, Shadow Scizor, Dusclops, Gastrodon, Galarian Weezing, and Talonflame. So I registered my team for the tournament, and round 1 began. My round 1 opponent was running an anti-meta team featuring 2 water types and 3 shadows. Shadow Typhlosion, Shadow Marowak, Shadow Drapion, Jellicent, Greninja, and Jumpluff. Right off the bat, looking across my team, Regidrago looks unbelievable into this team. As long as Regidrago is able to avoid the Jumpluff, Regidrago has entirely winning matchups. So I set my team and lock in a strategy built around Regidrago. We lock in our teams for game number 1, and I lead Regidrago into that Jumpluff. All I had to do in this matchup was not have Regidrago on the Jumpluff, and unfortunately my opponent read me like a book. They're going to be firing off an Aerial Ace in this matchup. I'm very comfortable no-shielding that, and then I will look to return fire with the hard-hitting Dragon Energy. Dragon Energy will not pick up a knockout, but it will inflict some pretty sizable damage. I've decided at this point that I want to try and make a play for alignment, so I will shield once and get a farm down. So I shield up the Aerial Ace, go for the farm down, but they're too bulky. They withstand the farm down. That's a massive misplay by me. And unfortunately, I'm now down 2 shields. However, my opponent with Jumpluff out of the way does not have a good check to Regidrago, so they save switch into Typhlosion. Not only do I get a shield with the Breaking Swipe, I get a debuff as well. I'm able to grab the final shield from my opponent, and I'm forced to pivot into the Dusclops. Timing the pivot when I did means that I will outpace this Typhlosion to their second Blast Burn, and with no Protect shields remaining, this Shadow Punch will be enough to pick up the knockout. My only worry at this point would be a Greninja in the back, as Greninja could get a ton of farm against the Dusclops. But it's not the Greninja, it's going to be Jellicent. Jellicent, going to be taking super effective damage from Shadow Punch. It's not going to knock out by any means, but I have to watch for a catch. So I farm past the move, there's the catch attempt, and now this game is a win. Jellicent will be able to knock out the Dusclops and deny my energy here, but I can just bring in the Galarian Weezing. No one move KOs the Weezing, so I can fire off this Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing will be enough to KO the Jellicent and secure a 1-0 advantage in this best of 3. Even though I didn't see the Greninja in game number 1, after I used Dusclops, I'm expecting they're going to bring it in game number 2, so I'm going to make an adjustment in strategy. I don't think that the line I ran in game number 1 was a particularly smart line. I think a far more clever line would feature Regidrago lead with Gastrodon in the back, as my opponent only has 1 resistance to Mud Slap, and that's the Jumpluff. So if I lead Regidrago into the Jumpluff, I can just force alignment, and then Gastrodon is free, or if I don't lead into the Jumpluff, I can always just play for switch with the Regidrago. So with that in mind, I'm going to be running that line. Regidrago, Galarian Weezing, and Gastrodon. The leads are locked in for game number 2. Regidrago once again leads into Jumpluff, but this time I'm a lot more comfortable with the matchup. I learned that I can't really go for a farm down. As long as I just get this Jumpluff low, I know that my Gastrodon is going to have only winning matchups in the back. So I'm going to play it out a similar way to start with, but I'm not going to be investing shields onto the Regidrago. Rather, my only goal is just to get it low. This is an Energy Ball Jumpluff, which means they do not have access to Acrobatics. So I'm more than happy just to play out the zeros. If my opponent wants switch, I will give it to them because the jump fluff's low enough that it can't really deal with the Gastrodon. They bring in Drapion, and oh no, it's time. Gastrodon hits the field. Gastrodon inflicts massive damage onto the Drapion. Drapion will return fire with the crunch in the back. There's the adjustment I was expecting. There is Greninja. Greninja was hoping to catch my Dusclops, but now all it's going to see is the Galarian Weezing. Even though Brutal Swing is resisted in this matchup, the Fairy Winds are doing enough that I just need whatever chip damage I can get. So I'm not even going to build up to the Sludge, I'm just going to go straight for the back-to-back Brutal Swings. This means my opponent can no-shield, but even no-shield in the Brutal Swing, the damage is done. Galarian Weezing will get KO'd by the Night Slash, but I can bring in the Gastrodon. There is the Drapion right on cue, and Drapion is immediately put under pressure from the Body Slam. Body Slam is shielded. They fire off a last-second charge attack. They could have survived the Mud Slap, but realistically, there's no way for them to win because I will exit this matchup with the Body Slam loaded. Back in comes Greninja. Body Slam is going to be knocking them out, and we're able to get the round 1 win 2-0. My round 2 opponent is Sharkboy Arcool. At first, when looking through the team sheet, it looked to be a pretty standard team. Talonflame, Diggersby, Dedenne, Credilli, but then I see Regidrago and an Avalugg, so we do have some anti-meta picks mixed in as well. On first glance, my Shadow Scizor looks incredible. As long as it avoids the Talonflame, even against Diggersby, which is a losing matchup, it can fight back. So I'm absolutely going to be using the core of Shadow Scizor and Regidrago in these battles. For game 1, I decide to lead Shadow Scizor. And that decision is immediately rewarded as I lead it into Credilli. This is a dominant lead-win matchup. I get the Trailblaze when they get their Rock Tomb. Trailblaze, no! They wait a turn, catch, and sneak an entire Incinerate on a Talonflame. What a play from my opponent. And despite the amazing lead matchup, my opponent completely outplays me, and I'm now on the defensive. The good news is I have a very good check for Talonflame in Regidrago, but my goodness, I lost almost my entire Scizor in one Incinerate. Opponent is going to bring back in the Credilli. Credilli will be firing off the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb inflicts some pretty sizable damage, but I'm still pretty okay with that because I can survive it. This Breaking Swipe will come close to knocking out. We do see a shield from the Credilli. I get the debuff as well, and that debuff proves to be extremely important as my opponent is denied a farm down and is forced to fire off their Rock Tomb. So now I'm going to be bringing in Dusclops, and in the back, my opponent has their own Regidrago. So they were running a line that was ABA weak to the Scizor, but by making the brilliant play that they made, they almost neutralized the entire Scizor because that Incinerate did so much damage. The unfortunate thing is even with that play, I'm still in a very good spot. I get debuffed on my Dusclops, so I switch into the Scizor, and the threat of a Night Slash forces the Breaking Swipe. Now that my attack is back to full, I can fire off this Ice Punch, and without any debuffs, that's going to get the Regidrago very close to getting knocked out. And now, thanks to this Shadow Punch, it's going to be game over for my opponent. As down goes Regidrago, we farm down Credilli as well, and take a 1-0 lead. That game number 1, I honestly got outplayed, but I had such a good team comp advantage that I was still able to get the win. I'm going to need to play better in game number 2 if I don't want this series to be evened up. My opponent ran ABA to Scizor last time. I don't think they'll do that again, so I'm going to lead my Regidrago, anticipating either the Diggersby or the Talonflame lead. So we lock in our teams, and that is a worst case scenario as Regidrago leads into the Fairy type Dedenne. I decide to bank a ton of energy, safe switch into the Dusclops, and my opponent throwing energy is really nice for me here. I would much rather they stay in and beat the Dusclops with Dedenne because that means their energy is not landing on the Regidrago. They fire off the Parabolic Charge, they decide to save the Dedenne, and they bring out Regidrago. But Regidrago is not going to be a big fan of these Ice Punches. Ice Punch number 2 will not knock out, but it will get my opponent deep into the red health. My opponent decides to preserve health, but my switch clock's up, and I bring in Shadow Scizor. I'm fully expecting the final Pokemon in the back is Talonflame, so I'm not going to be shielding Scizor. Scizor does get debuffed, which means my opponent can hang on 1 HP and make a last-second Breaking Swipe. I'm now 2 stages debuffed, there is the Talonflame, and the decision to fully sacrifice the Scizor proves to be a wise one. Night Slash is going to land, and now it's all up to Regidrago to try and pull out a miraculous win. Regidrago Dragon Energy does get shielded as my opponent wants to try and get shields down. They did use the vast majority of their energy from the Dedenne already. They're staying in with the Talonflame, and I will fire off the Breaking Swipe right before they get their next fly. Breaking Swipe is going to pick up the knockout. In comes Dedenne, and they reach a play rough. But I think they're baiting with the Parabolic Charge to buff up their defense, so I no shield, call the Parabolic Charge bait, and suddenly there is a win con. Regidrago ended up on the Fairy type, but it's not gonna matter. We get the attack drop, and we survive to get to the Dragon Energy. This is double resisted, but it does not matter. Down goes Dedenne, and we win round 2. My next opponent is Exeggutor, who has hit rank 1 in the world on the Go Battle League leaderboards. This is going to be a very tough fight, and they're running a team with Shadow Marowak, Cradily, Fortress, Golisopod, Tentacruel, and Furret. And as I take a look at their team and I look at mine, I realize I'm in danger. In trying to cover for all the Fairy types and the Ice types, I kind of forgot to bring a Furret counter. And that means that this is going to be a really tough matchup, as in any team I build, Furret is going to have a lot of neutral play. When in doubt for what to run, I'm going to stick with the Pokemon I built the team around, and that is Regidrago, and I lead it into Cradily. This is a fine matchup for Regidrago, but I have 2 better responses in the back. So my plan is to tank the move, and then 0-turn switch into the Shadow Scizor to get ahead on energy. I look to switch, but damage registration error occurs, and that means that I can't get the 0-turn switch out. Instead, I have to throw a Dragon Breath and then switch, and that means that Scizor should have 6 bullet punches here if I got the 0-turn switch, but unfortunately only has 5. This means I am energy dry, so when the Marowak hits the field, unfortunately, I get outpaced due to that occurring. I can't really afford to shield this, so I will just let it go, and I have to trust that for game number 1, there is not a Furret in the back. But honestly, considering how strong Furret is into my team, that's a pretty poor bet. I tried to run 2 Pokemon that were pretty solid into Furret and then a Dusclops, because Dusclops has great play into my opponent if it can dodge the Furret, but unfortunately, it's highly likely that there is the Furret in the back, and there it is, and now I am in trouble. I can switch into the Regidrago, and to me, it's a 50-50. I decide to go out swinging, full send the Dragon Energy, that gets shielded, and that unfortunately will sink me. When I get close to the Dragon Energy, my opponent is just going to switch into the Cradily. I can never throw a move at the Cradily because then I don't have the energy to beat the Furret, but I also can't farm down the Cradily, so unfortunately, game number 1 is going to be a loss. That Furret looked to be a problem on paper, and it absolutely was in this first match. To me, the Dusclops was a risky gamble, and it did not pay off at all as it got aligned into the Fortress. I know that I'm bringing Scizor and Regidrago. I have to decide on a third. I debate Galarian Weezing for quite some time, but deem it too risky with the Marowak being brought in game 1, so I opt to go for Talonflame as my third Pokemon, and I decide to lead Shadow Scizor. So the leads are set. It's going to be Shadow Scizor for me into the Fortress, and that is not what I was hoping to see, as unfortunately, my Talonflame in the back is probably not going to have an amazing time considering they're leading a Bug Steel. I will fire off the Night Slash. Opponent is going to no shield, knowing that they're just able to win all even shields as the Fortress. I decide to play zeros and then look for farm on Talonflame, and there is the Furret. And Furret, I don't have a resistance to its moves here. I chose not to bring the Weezing. Weezing at the very least would resist Sucker Punch, so this is going to be a very difficult game. The good news is I can force both shields. I would very much prefer if my opponent just let the Furret go, but they know how strong it is into my team. They're always going to be committing a shield. So they shield up the fly, I switch into the Regidrago, and now they get to put all of their energy to use. Firing off Swift after Swift, and that's going to be really, really tough for Regidrago to deal with. Regidrago decides to double shield in this matchup, and there's the switch to Fortress. Fortress going to be resisting everything Regidrago throws. I will be firing off this Breaking Swipe, hoping it can knock out, but it does not, and the Dragon Breaths do not either. That's a 1 HP survive by the Fortress to get the Sand Tomb. That is absolutely tragic. In comes the Furret. Furret is going to make the Swift, so I switch and catch onto the Talonflame. I need Regidrago's energy to clutch this win for me. Regidrago gets the farm down. In the back is Cradily, and I will fire off the Breaking Swipe. I need Breaking Swipe plus the Dragon Breath plus Dragon Energy to KO. I do get the attack debuff, and I get this Dragon Energy, but unfortunately, Dragon Energy is not enough. Cradily hangs on, and I lose my first round of the tournament, moving to 2-1. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't very disappointed with how my round 3 went. It was a tough matchup against a good battler who played well, but I still feel like I could have been better. I think that the biggest failing of mine in that series was not trusting the Galarian Weezing. I think Galarian Weezing had a lot of play, but I didn't have faith in it, and I kept it on the bench, and that ended up costing me as I just had no way of beating the Furret. My round 4 opponent also looks very weak to Galarian Weezing, with a team featuring Araquanid, Shadow Annihilate, Mandibuzz, Shadow Drapion, Dedenne, and Diggersby. So as long as I can keep the Galarian Weezing off of the Diggersby, Galarian Weezing has very nice play into absolutely anything else that my opponent can bring. So I decide that I'm going to be leading that Galarian Weezing, and I'm going to put Talonflame and the Regidrago in the back, confident that I have enough bench pressure to scare away Dedenne. That is a great lead, Galarian Weezing into Shadow Annihilate. They save switch into Shadow Drapion, and I decide that I'm going to trade charge attacks before bringing in the Regidrago. I fire off the Sludge that will do some pretty nice damage. My opponent will get to land an Aqua Tail, but I can survive that pretty comfortably. They actually go for the Crunch, trying for a potential debuff. I fail to catch onto Regidrago, so I'm just going to let the Crunch go. My opponent Aqua Tail baited, expecting a shield, trying to get to the Crunch, but the Dragon Breath damage is too much, and they're not able to get there. If they bring back in the Annihilate is going to have a pretty tricky time against the Regidrago, as Regidrago has a very big energy lead. I fire off the Breaking Swipe, that gets the debuff, and does very nice damage. And they're so low already that I'm just going to be shielding up the Regidrago. They go for the Rage Fist. In the back is Diggersby. And at this point, I'm completely in the driver's seat because I have a wall to Diggersby's energy in the back with Talonflame. I do not get the debuff with the first Breaking Swipe, so let's go for Breaking Swipe number 2. This one gets the shield. There's the switch into the Talonflame. Diggersby. Oh no, they thought that I got the 1-turn switch, but I did Q the switch, so it's a 0, and that gives me a free Incinerate. The good news is, whether they threw on alignment or not, this game was a win, just because Diggersby can't really do anything into Talonflame. In comes Annihilate, the Incinerate goes through, and we take the 1-0 lead. That game 1 went about as well as it possibly could have gone. Everything lined up perfectly. The one adjustment I think I'm going to make for game number 2 is I want to make sure that no matter where the Diggersby is, I always have good matchups. And that unfortunately means Galarian Weezing will return to the bench, and I will sub in Dusclops in its place as a lead. So for game number 2, Dusclops is going to lead into the Shadow Annihilate once again. Opponent is going to stay in here with the Annihilate. I'm just going to bank up a ton of energy, and they're now going to send in Drapion. Drapion will get chipped with the Ice Punch, and then I can look to bring in Regidrago. Regidrago farming up quite a bit of energy. I will look to CMP tie the Drapion when they get their move. Crunch is going to land, farming up with the Regidrago. I try to CMP tie them there, but I guess I missed the button, and that's a really bad misplay by me. That's a big misplay for me because my opponent can bring in the Annihilate, throw their move, win charge attack priority, and I would be forced to give up my final shield to keep this energy. So they bring in the Annihilate, but they don't throw the move. Interesting. It looks like they are actually valuing a full farm down and then to overwhelm my Dusclops with Rage Fists. However, I'm not going to let that happen. I force both shields, switch into the Dusclops, and combo play with the Shadow Punch. Just like that, goodbye to all that Annihilate energy. It's going to be Diggersby in the back, and we can just win the game now with the Dusclops. Dusclops' Ice Punch is going to land, and my opponent will resign the match. And now we're going to be jumping from round 4 to round 6, the final round of the tournament. In round number 5, unfortunately, my video recording of my battles ended up corrupting, which is devastating. What I do remember from it is they had a Galarian Corsola that looked to be particularly problematic because I don't have a ghost resistance on my team. However, they were very soft to Talonflame energy, so by carefully leveraging Talonflame energy in both games, I was able to get the 2-0 win and move to 4 wins and 1 loss in the tournament, setting up the final round, which is a showdown against RGR. RGR is a terrific battler, and they're running a very strong team. Shadow Drapion, Shadow Quagsire, Azumarill, Shadow Dusclops, Talonflame, and a Leaf Tornado Superior. RGR's team has the exact kind of Firewater Grass core with the Quag Talon Superior that Regidrago absolutely feasts on, so I'm bringing Regidrago game 1, and I'm putting it on the lead. Regidrago does not find the Firewater Grass core, but still finds a good matchup into the Shadow Drapion. Regidrago can very comfortably tank a crunch in this matchup, but I'm confident that they're ABA weak, so I will commit the shield and then just cap tie Breaking Swipe to their next crunch. But unfortunately, the game animations get delayed by a turn there, and that causes me to mess up my timing on my CMP tie, and I'm forced to go down 2 shields. So I exit with 100 energy, but if they have an Azumarill, this energy is useless, but I get very, very lucky. Azumarill is not in the back, and that means they have no resistance to Dragon on this line of 3. I land the Dragon energy, now I get to fire off the Breaking Swipe, and I'm just going to look to pivot into my own Dusclops. I do get the attack drop there, so a 50-50 swing of good luck does go my way, as now these Shadow punches will not be nearly as threatening. This means I will exit with a good amount of energy on my Dusclops. What do they have in the back? It's the Talonflame, and my final Pokemon is Shadow Scizor, so I am in danger. I fire off the Shadow Punch. That's not going to do a lot of damage, but I just need whatever chip damage that I can possibly get. My switch clock should be up after the Shadow Punch. I switch into the Regidrago, and I just need as much damage onto this Talonflame as I can possibly get. Breaking Swipe does get the debuff, but that is not going to let me survive this Fly. Fly picks up the KO. Can Scizor get the Bullet Punch down? Scizor Bullet Punches down a Talonflame, and that's going to be a Game 1 win. As we move to game number 2, I know that my opponent is going to be bringing a Azumarill. They did not bring a Dragon Resist game number 1, and Regidrago's energy was an absolute nightmare. So if they're bringing a Azumarill, I need to build a line of 3 that can handle that. So I think I'm going to lead with Gastrodon. The only things Gastrodon doesn't want to see are Talonflame and Serperior, and those are 2 Pokemon that are really tough to bring considering how strong Regidrago was in game number 1. So the leads are set. I'm leading Gastrodon into the Azumarill, and we get the call right. For the team, I'm running Gastrodon with Dusclops as the safe switch as needed, and as the closer, Regidrago. Considering I'm encountering their Fairy type on the lead, I already really like my chances to win this game. My opponent makes the correct play, which is to go for Double Ice Beam in this matchup, as Double Ice Beam allows you to outpace the Gastrodon, so they will get the move right before I get the Earth Power, so I will actually save the Gastrodon for later and make a catch onto Dusclops. Dusclops more than happy to absorb that energy, and now out comes Talonflame. The nice thing about Dusclops versus Talonflame is you can always make it really difficult for the opponent. They never have a good time to throw their charge moves, because you can always cycle reset them to the point where they have to throw on alignment. Talonflame goes for the Fly, and I survive on 1 HP. I intentionally ran a very high bulk Dusclops for this tournament. I mentioned it in the intro, and that pays dividends as I survive to make a last second move. I bring in Gastrodon to go for the Body Slam and the Farm Down. Body Slam lands, but they survive the Farm Down to get a double up, and that's very bad for me. I should have thrown the Earth Power. That was a misplay. Earth Power would have done more, and they couldn't have doubled up and forced the shield. Now, Talonflame is going to switch out. It's a Shadow Quagsire in the back, and now it's a baiting game. Will they full send? Will they go for the bait? I shield, and I get the shield call right as it's the Stone Edge. I now farm up so much energy with the Regidrago, and I'm firing off the Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe into the Quagsire will be no-shielded. Quagsire does not get the move as Regidrago farms down. Back in comes the Azumarill, and now I'm going to need to try and KO with a double resisted Dragon Energy. They commit the shield. Regidrago gets Dragon Energy number 2. I need this plus 1 Dragon Breath to KO. Dragon Energy doesn't KO, but the Dragon Breath after does. Regidrago with the full 1v3 sweep to secure a round 6 victory. Now that the tournament has concluded, I finished with a record of 5 wins and 1 loss. Unfortunately, even though this is a really great showing in a tournament, this was not enough to win, as we did have a trainer finish with the tournament sweep perfect 6 win and 0 loss record. I came into this tournament with the goal to try and win a tournament with one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, Regidrago, and unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. I didn't team build well enough to help Regidrago claim the crown. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be. I've always believed there's something special to using one of your favorite Pokemon, even if it's not considered one of the strongest or one of the most used Pokemon, and still trying to have results with it. But maybe I need a different approach. Maybe instead of entering a tournament with one of my favorite Pokemon, maybe I need to do something different. Maybe I should enter a tournament with one of my least favorite Pokemon of all time. A Pokemon that even just hearing its name brings me great disgust. A Pokemon that I hold personally responsible for ruining a past Pokemon Go PvP meta. Well, I guess I'll have to do just that.